morning, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, let me express a warm welcome to the media, to the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training for a very important exercise this morning. I have with us this morning Ambassador, Her Excellency Elizabeth Thompson, Minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Sandra Husbands, the Minister of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Honorable Santia Bradshaw, and our Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Ms. Betty Allen Headley. This morning we are gathered to witness the presentation to the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, a number of devices which the Ministry of Education is very pleased to receive at this time that will go a very long way in assisting the government of Barbados in meeting a significant gap that has presented itself as a result of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic here in Barbados. As many of you would be aware, the educational system came to a basic halt on the 18th of March 2020. And as a result, the Ministry of Education had to immediately embark on an emergency response approach to the delivery of education for thousands of children across the national landscape. At that time, many of our students were not in possession of adequate devices to allow them to actively engage in the learning exercise, which we obviously had to move from face-to-face to the online platform. Nevertheless, the Ministry of Education would have embarked on a tech drive to ensure that we're in a position to fill that gap and to ensure that all children in this country would be able to continue to benefit from the provision of educational services. Today, as a part of that drive, the ministry is very pleased to be able to receive a donation which will assist us in helping to bridge the gap between those who have not been able to access devices on their own, but have been able to do so through the efforts of the Ministry of Education. And to come and speak to us and to give some information as it relates to the presentation for this morning, I wish to welcome Ambassador, Her Excellency Elizabeth Thompson, to address you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief Education Officer, Honorable Ministers, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Education. Let me say how delighted I am to be in Barbados and to be out in the sunshine and to be alive. Let me start, if I may, by extending to the media deepest condolences on the loss of a member of your fraternity a couple days ago. Many young people don't know, but one of the first jobs that I had was as a journalist at the Nation newspaper, so that the profession of journalism remains close to my heart. And I know that, in fact, there are always risks, and that there requires, even though in Barbados we tend not to think of the dangers posed to the media as they attempt to do their job. And this has brought home very forcibly and very visibly that there are risks involved. And I want to thank you for continuing to give service to our nation as this very important sector. I literally brought notes because I'm not technologically savvy. I'm going to use the expression BajUNS. It is spelled capital B, small a, small j, capital U, capital N, small s. So this morning I am making a presentation on behalf of BajUNS. The BajUNS are the Barbadian staff members of the United Nations, And in this instance, the donation is from those members of the BajUNS group who are based at New York. There are only about 15 of them, so it's a very small group. Some of them contributed 2 devices, some contributed 1. So the boxes contain 21 Alcatel IT tablets with keyboards, which would be suitable for the use in the primary school system. There are 2 Hewlett-Packard 14-inch laptops that have 4 gigabytes of memory. I won't give the other technical specifications. There is a list available with the names of all of the individuals who contributed, and I sent that to the ministry yesterday in case you want to have the name. And there are as well 10 Burcom infrared handheld thermometers, the thermometer guns as some people call them, the touchless devices, so that they can be used in the school system as well. And they were supported not just from the group but from OSI, the company in Barbados from which the devices were purchased. The initiative was led by Miss Roseanne Clark, who works in the UN system. The staff members range in disciplines from security to administration to technical professionals. I'd like to think of this as an important gift in terms of some of the large sums that the ministry has been receiving. It isn't numerically in terms of pure dollar figures at the same scale, but it is important at the representative level. Here is a group of Barbadians living outside of Barbados, working outside of Barbados, who are asking themselves at this time, given the nature of the challenges that our country is facing, how can we as Barbadians contribute and give back to our country, and how can we ensure that a generation of students is equipped to deal with technology, both in the time of COVID and beyond, as well as given the fact that technology is creating new pathways for growth, for development, for learning, and for revenue generation. And I hope that what we are going to be doing in the educational system isn't just teaching and learning by rote, but that we are creating a more creative, innovative, entrepreneurial student whose will see their market not just as Barbados, but certainly a global market space in which they can operate and which the technology now gives us access to. It is significant, therefore, that a group of Barbadians in the diaspora are choosing to give back to Barbados. It signifies what we can do if we use our diaspora in a strategic way. Our diaspora is located all over the world. We like to say that wherever you go in the world, you can find a Bajan. And these Barbadians have high skills. They have great information, business and commercial networks. Some of them are exceptionally well qualified and extremely well positioned in places where they can help to make a strategic difference at the national level. And we have to start to call on and use our diaspora so that the benefits which they are capable of giving can be repatriated in a tangible way and very quickly, particularly in times when the country is under stress. In fact, the Barbados Labour Party manifesto of the last election speaks to the whole development of a new relationship with the diaspora, and it is into that new relationship that this gift fits. Here is a group of Barbadians, highly skilled, who are using the opportunity to identify a national need and to help to fill that national need. So some of the devices are suitable for primary school students. The laptops clearly would be applicable to secondary school students. When they approached me, because I happen to be here, about making the presentation, I felt that it was important as the ambassador at the UN, if the Barbadian UN staff members were attempting to do that, to join with them, and therefore I made a contribution of a laptop and a tablet as well. So as I indicated, the list of all the names is available. It was led by Ms. Roseanne Clark. I think that there are just two further points which I would want to make. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is, excuse me, represented by Minister Husbands. We tend to think of our international relations as our interface with the international community. We have not sufficiently in the past, even though we have a high quality of education in Barbados, and even though I see our nationals perform with excellence in the UN system and at the international level, wherever I go, because with the UN, my relationship is with 192 other member states. We do not really truly attempt to place our nationals in international organizations so that those international organizations can be more sensitive to issues relating to Barbados and to small island developing states. If we train people and train them to a high level, we should be putting them out not just in Barbados, but our marketplace needs to be the international space. That is where major decisions are made. That is where resources are determined for countries. That is where international policy is framed. It is how we position ourselves, not just onshore, but offshore. It is how we position ourselves in the international community. And it is critical, therefore, that we try to place more Barbadians in international organizations, whether they're business organizations, NGOs and international NGOs, or whether it is the UN system, meaning the international financial institutions, the banks, the development banks, or the United Nations and its myriad member organizations itself. Now, to do that, and this is where we come back to the education, it isn't just the general education benefit, but a number of Barbadian young people approach me and say, I'm interested in working in the UN. Invariably, two things act as a barrier. They come only with a first degree. If you are serious about working at the international level, I want to say to our young people, a first degree is not going to do it. You have to have at least one master's, maybe two, because everybody with whom you work and sit at the table in the United Nations at a certain level has a PhD. Some people have two. If you are going to come with a first degree, you can't get hired because you aren't even going to be able to compete on the basis of training alone, even if you have a first class honors. The second thing is that invariably, even if they do have the master's or the PhD, they stumble over the hurdle of foreign language skills, that they do not have the language fluencies that allow them to work at the international level. And very often you see it where the jobs are advertised and they ask you to have a minimum of 3 language skills, French, Spanish, and English. They might ask for Portuguese. They may ask for Japanese or Chinese or Korean or something else. But you are going to have to come with some basic understanding and facility with more than one language. And therefore, we have to see Barbados as connecting not just with the Eastern Caribbean, but with a wider space in Latin America and at the global level. And therefore, we have to have the language skills which will allow us to compete and communicate globally. So these are how we are, these are the ways in which we need to position our young people. This is how we do it, and I've tried to explain why we do it, to position Barbados internationally, to repatriate benefits, and to ensure that the country's brand is burnished in the world and that people understand that Barbadians are persons of excellence who have a great deal to offer. I believe that now that we have started working virtually in ways where we did not previously anticipate, anticipate that we were going to be able to do, that is certainly something that is going to continue. And the technology will enable that. And it is in this context, therefore, that I'm happy to be the face today and BajUNS of BajUNS at New York. It is my honor to be present with you and with the ministers and to be able to say to all of Barbados, we love our country. And even though we are not physically present in that space, in the Barbados space, in the 166 square miles, Barbados is always in our hearts. And if there is any way at all in which we can contribute to the quality of national life or the improvement of national life, then we are all willing to do so. And I ask ministers that you accept this gift in that spirit of Barbadians living abroad who want to contribute at home and to make a difference. So I'm deeply grateful that the ministers made themselves available, and their technical officers, the Deputy Chief Education Officer and Permanent Secretary, to receive this gift. And I hope that it will encourage other groups in the diaspora to give and to give generously. And I am grateful that all of you turned out to receive and to be present at this ceremony this morning. So thank you very much. The BajUNS are at New York are giddy with excitement that they're being facilitated in this way, and they're already talking about taking up another collection to do another contribution. So ministers, I hope that I will be able to either come back and bring or inform of that second gift. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Thompson. At this time, I wish to invite the Honorable Sandra Husbands, Minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, to deliver her remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Minister Santia Bradshaw, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, our Honorable Ambassador Elizabeth Thompson. I'm so pleased to be able to stand here with you this morning at such a wonderful occasion. And as was shared, Barbadians want to do something for their country. And this is evidenced by the gift that has been presented to us by BajUNS, the Barbadians at the UN. Because at heart, wherever you go across the globe, where Barbadians are, there is always the constant cry, how can we contribute to Barbados? And certainly COVID deepened that cry among our diaspora. As they were locked down, they had time to focus and pay attention to what is happening in their country, the country of their birth, the country of their ancestors. How were we faring? And so a number of them have been able to contribute gifts and resources, information that has been helpful. One of the most important things, though, that they were able to do was to help us make the necessary connections that we needed in order to get supplies during the COVID lockdown. Small nations like ours battled with bigger nations trying to get a hold of PPE and ventilators, the very necessary medical supplies that we needed to fight COVID. And believe me, it was often a challenge. There were reports from different countries, indeed it had happened to us at one time, where resources that were allocated to us were diverted to another country. And so our diaspora and persons who had Barbados at heart were calling the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, sharing their connections, offering to make calls to businesses, whether they were in China, whether they were in Korea, whether they were in Hong Kong, whether they were in Germany, offering to us the opportunity to assist us in purchasing those very, very necessary supplies that we needed to ensure that Barbados could survive COVID. And so I want to expressly give thanks to those persons who have been so vigilant and so caring as to want to assist our country at this time. And therefore, I want to thank very much the Barbadians at the UN. Why? Each of them have their own cares, their own concerns. They have family members that they have to help. They have to respond to the changes that they have to make in terms of being able to do their job at the UN. But in the midst of this, they made the sacrifice and made a contribution from persons at the very top of our UN group to persons at the very bottom because they cared. And so, on behalf of the government of Barbados, I would want to express our tremendous thanks for this gift and for having the opportunity to be able to present it to the Ministry of Education. Indeed, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade has been working very closely with a number of the ministries that have been on the front line. Not only have we been working with health, we'll also be working with education to be able to help source donations that will enable us to give to our children the technology that they need so that they too can thrive in a post-COVID world. Now, as was shared by the ambassador, this is part of Barbados's overall plan. One of the things that we are seeking to do is to build out what we term a diasporic economy. This means mobilizing all of our diaspora, developing a database of their skills, their resources, and the opportunities which they present, and to be able to gather from that information what are the potential areas that Barbados could develop new economic activity that can help to drive our growth. Now, this was started back earlier in 2019 when we were preparing for regathering. However, the advent of COVID actually brought that to a temporary halt. It is the intention of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade to restart that program of finding where our diaspora are. And we are going to be involving the local Barbadians here to assist us by forwarding to us the information, the names and contact number with the permission of that person so that we can make contact with them and share what are some of the areas that we would like to have some assistance in. So that is something that you'll be able to look forward to shortly. In addition, we recognize the absolute importance for Barbados to engage differently on the international and global stage. And we have recognized how important it is that we broaden our network of friends, that we broaden our network of partners, that we can work together to be able to gain the assistance that we need to represent our interests at the international level. As part of our program going forward in 2020, we will be looking at putting on commercial diplomacy training for all of our people who engage Barbados, whether they work at a mission or whether they're honorary consul or whether they are in the diaspora. What is our objective? It is to be able to have as many eyes and ears on the ground as we can to advance our trade interests, to discover opportunities for our products, and to make a way for enterprises to be able to engage the global economy. This is going to be very important if we're going to continue to generate prosperity for Barbados. So those are just a couple of the things that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade will be pursuing in this year, and we are hopeful that it will produce the necessary fruit we need for Barbados. And so I want again, as I close, to thank the Honorable Elizabeth Thompson, our ambassador to the UN, and to ask her to convey to our members there our sincere thanks for this contribution. God bless you.
Thank you, Minister Husbands. This morning, I'm very pleased to welcome our Minister of Education, the Honorable Santia Bradshaw, to address you.
Good morning to everyone, Ambassador Thompson, colleague minister, husbands, permanent secretary, and chief education officer deputy. Members of the media, let me at the outset express condolences as well to all of you. I know for many of you, you may think that you are only person standing behind a camera sometimes or with a tape asking many of us questions. But I do feel that in the circumstances of the loss of Christoph, there's been a greater awareness of the important function that all of you as persons in the media perform. Our sympathies are with you because I know it cannot be easy. It could have been any of you as well. And I just want to express personally to you here our condolences, certainly from the Ministry of Education, as you get through this very difficult time, mourning the loss of a colleague journalist. I'm very pleased this morning to be here as well, in the company of such distinguished persons, particularly in the company of Ambassador Thompson, who is one of the women that I believe has broken the glass ceiling and paved the way for many of us young politicians and young female politicians in Barbados. I am also pleased that I share the cabinet with Minister Husbands as well, who has been blazing a trail in relation to foreign affairs. And the Ministry of Education, over the course of the last few months, has found itself in a very difficult position as it relates to the COVID pandemic. We had not planned for the COVID pandemic. We had in no way, while always knowing that we had to ensure that we had technology in the schools and that we had devices available to our students, had no time to basically plan for what we have been confronted with. That notwithstanding, we have responded to the challenge that has confronted us. And thankfully, because of partners, whether it has been embassies abroad and here, whether it has been individuals, corporate entities, companies, just groups of persons coming together, and now certainly in the form of this entity, BajUNS, coming forward with a view to being able to assist the Ministry of Education with its Tech Drive project, we have been able to make some headway in relation to the number of devices that are needed to get to all of the students that require these devices in the system so that they can pursue their education. Even as I'm standing here, I am constantly watching the flow of traffic of persons traversing the Ministry of Education. And I can tell you that there are a number of persons both entering the premises and leaving the premises with devices. It has not been an easy battle to make sure that we had all of our devices in place in a timely manner. There are lots of commitments that people have made who have been trying to source the devices from overseas, and it is an ongoing process. The good thing about it is that the vast majority of the students who would be sitting the 11 plus examination, the students who are doing exams, they have been given priority and those students have received their devices. And as the other devices come into the ministry, we have been allocating those devices to students according to the needs. And I think before I would have indicated to you that we looked at students who would have been either on, their parents would have been welfare recipients. We looked at students who may have had certain challenges or disabilities. We also looked at the students who were preparing for examinations. And on that basis, as these devices come to hand, we have been prioritizing accordingly. Beyond COVID, the need for technology has not missed this ministry. I'm really planning for September because I believe that there's nothing anymore that is certain. When September comes, we don't know whether or not, as we prepare to go back into school, whether we will be still in this environment with restrictions on our movement and certainly on public transportation. And therefore, the ministry's attention has been being engaged as it relates to trying to see what are the options available to us to ensure that children may be able to have some time at school, but also to be able to have devices that they can continue their education. A few months ago, during the estimates, we would have announced as a government the intention to introduce things like robotics into the curriculum. And I know the Prime Minister is very keen on this project to ensure that we have the adequate supply of devices, because the good thing about robotics is that you need devices. So we had already started to explore purchasing devices for our various schools to be able to introduce this new component into the curriculum. And I can tell you that that is well on its way for us to be able to acquire those devices. That commitment has been made by the Prime Minister And in terms of being able to source the devices, we are hopeful that for the start of the September term, we will be able to start that process where students can be introduced to an area that I believe is breaking ground internationally. And I think we too need to be in a position that we are able to introduce our children to a number of these cutting edge areas in terms of education. We have started to train teachers in coding over the course of the last few weeks. We've had teachers who are going to go on to train in the robotics. They have been training at the Urdeston Teachers Training College. They're very excited about what the future holds in terms of the classroom environment based on the skills that they have picked up on the coding program. It allows them to obviously be innovative in the classroom. And of course, if we're training our teachers to be innovative, we have to ensure that we have the adequate supply of devices so that students can respond to them as well in terms of the imparting of information. So this donation today from BajUNS is very timely. It is deeply appreciated by this ministry, and I know the wider society as well. Many people recognize that we don't want to have the inequalities in our system. We want people to have access to not just a free education, but we also want to ensure that no child is left behind, that every child has the opportunity to have the access to devices. I think this period has shown us, both Barbadians living here and abroad, a number of the inequalities which exist in the households as well. And perhaps what COVID has taught us is to be a bit more sensitive and to be able to respond to our children in a different way, recognizing that within their households, they are dealing with so many different factors that sometimes impact on their ability to learn. Things like electricity or not having electricity in the household or not having Wi-Fi connectivity. Prior to COVID, no one really gave this thought to it as they are now doing. And so many of the devices that have been coming as well have been coming with the SIM cards to be able to provide for students who don't have access to Wi-Fi. And we're really grateful to all persons who have been contributing thus far. BajUNS, the BajUNS entity for me is critically important, and I believe it is the first donation we've had specifically from Barbadians living abroad in an international and working in an international organization. I suspect, as Ambassador does, that this will not be the last donation from them, or certainly that others who are maybe thinking similarly will not also embark on being able to donate to the Ministry of Education and to support not just this project, but I'm sure to support other projects. And that is really what we have been saying for some time. I recall a few, I think it was just before the last election, visiting the New York with Prime Minister Motley, then leader of the party at the time, with Ambassador Thompson and others, and speaking to a number of persons, Barbadians in the diaspora, who were very eager to contribute in some way to Barbados. And as she rightly said, many of them are, their heart is in Barbados, even though they are physically located beyond our shores. They have families here, they have nieces and nephews just as we do. And while they work for international organizations, they're trying to find a way to give back. Obviously, we are very focused on persons giving back. If we're going to do for you, we want to make sure that as well in terms of education that you can give back to country. And so this donation really signals a philosophy, an underlying philosophy of this administration, that while we provide the foundation for people to be educated, and we're proud of wherever our people will end up, we still believe that if there are opportunities for them to contribute back to Barbados, then it is our responsibility to create those opportunities for them to give back. And also they all need to know that there is a way or a contact, whether through the ambassador or through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that they can find out about projects that are being done in Barbados that they may want to align themselves with. So I think this really signals for me tremendous opportunities. I know We Gathering was more focused on health, but I have always felt strongly that health and education should really be the two areas of focus for Barbadians in the diaspora to contribute to. Both are equally important, both carry large budgets as well, that any government on its own cannot really fully supply all of the needs of a particular country, and particularly given all of the constraints that we have. So it's important that we have partners. Some will look like us, some will not look like us. But the important thing is that we foster those relationships with a view to ensuring that we're in a position to make sure that no child is left behind, or that our society is built out in a meaningful way. So I really do thank the BajUNS ambassador for this donation. I must say to you and to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that since I've come to the ministry, I have had the pleasure of attending a number of ceremonies for students who have received scholarships to study overseas. And I've perused many files where we have allowed persons obviously to go out of our jurisdiction, and in many cases had to defer their return to Barbados in terms of their repayment of their bond, or not being able to come back to find work in Barbados. And I do believe that the time has now come for us to look at a different system and structure to be put in place to allow people to give back. Giving back does not necessarily mean alone paying back. Giving back can mean that you may be working in a firm, you may be working for another government or an international organization, and you may be able to offer your consultancy services back to Barbados as your contribution to being able to pay back. It also means that this ministry has a responsibility to Ministry of Foreign Affairs to identify all of the students who have received scholarships over the years and exhibitions, to identify where they are, what they're doing, the areas of study, and also to be in a position to support the program which the Ministry of Foreign Affairs the minister has spoken to, because I think it is important that we know where our people are. But we also have to accept that if people are going to have opportunities overseas to earn more money, it is unlikely that they're going to come back to Barbados to contribute to Barbados. And so our thinking has to change. We have to be prepared to make some changes in relation to the current system in relation to tertiary education and the scholarships that are available. We have to be able to put systems in place to allow people the flexibility to give back, because I do deferrals constantly of people who want to stay in the territories where they have been training. We are getting a large percentage of persons being absorbed into the international community, and we have a responsibility, I believe, to know where they are and to try to find ways to get them to be able to contribute back to society wherever they are. We're not here to stop people from going overseas to improve themselves, but we certainly have to recognize that if we spend all this money sending them outside of Barbados, it is our responsibility as a government to make sure that the structures are in place, that they can find a way to give back by the donations of this nature, or by their professional services to the country, or in any other way. Investment opportunities need to be available to them to see Barbados not as a distant place that you just take a vacation, but certainly as a place for investment opportunities and for professional development and the transfer of knowledge that they may have as well. And so today is, I think, very significant. I really do feel strongly that this donation will also inspire others to participate in the G Suite for Education project, which, as I said before, is not for me one which is specific to COVID, but I think it has now allowed persons to recognize that they can contribute in small ways, they can contribute in big ways. And just so that I let the ambassador know for the record that all contributions are important to us, big or small. And we try our best at the ministry to make sure that everyone gets the necessary publicity and recognition that they deserve, so that they understand how appreciative we are of the contributions that they are making to the development of Barbados, and certainly to the educational system in Barbados. As we get ready for students to participate in the upcoming Common Entrance Examination, obviously things are well on their way for our students. And as I said before, many of them would have received the devices. Many of them are back in the classroom as well and have settled down nicely. And so we look forward to what lies ahead for them as they go into first form at the respective secondary schools. So again, thank you to colleague minister and to ambassador and to all of you for being here. And again, Ambassador Thompson, I would ask that you convey the sentiments expressed here, or appreciation to all of the individuals who have donated, whether one device or two device or the thermometers, and let them know that we are more than interested in continuing to engage in dialogue to see how they can continue to contribute and to be acknowledged for their contribution. Because whether they are here or they are overseas, I think they're flying the Barbadian flag in their own small and big way, and we truly appreciate them. This is, as Prime Minister has said, and as the recent song that was released has said, this is who we are. You can put a Barbadian anywhere in the world, and they are going to succeed. And we just need to make that closer connection back to Barbados, so people feel that they can do what they're doing on a global scale, but they can also come back and contribute to their country. So I thank you all.